Well, hi there. I didn't realize I was live for a second. If you didn't get a chance to attend our service this morning, there it is. It's on Facebook, actually. I want to start by taking a deep breath. And just let everything that's been going on today, yesterday, in the past, just let it all move to one side for now. And you can pick it up or not pick it up after we've finished. Today's reading, as you probably saw from the heading there, is called No Luck Required. I'm going to read the whole thing and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to make some comments. Nothing negative. Excuse me. No luck required. As all truth exists now and awaits simply our perception of it, so all things necessary for the present needs exist now and await simply the power in us to appropriate them. And that was Ralph Waldo Trine, In Tune with the Infinite, on page 136. We're going to come back to him. Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind textbook says, we are to believe that God indwells our own life, that this divine presence is sufficient for all needs. We are to believe that God indwells our own life, that this divine presence is sufficient for all needs. And that was on page 431, paragraph 2 of the Science of Mind textbook. And when we refer to the Science of Mind textbook, we're talking about the 1930s edition. I think nowadays what they sell is a combined volume of the 1920s edition and the 1930s. But invariably, almost every single time, when you see a quote from the Science of Mind textbook, it's going to be from the 1930s edition, not the 1920s. And if you have the double volume, then it's the second book. The first one's the 20s, second one's the 30s. Yeah, I remember this story, actually. I don't remember all the details of it, but I do remember this story, not when it happened, but I do remember reading about it. In 1982, Steve Callahan set sail solo to cross the Atlantic in his 21-foot sailboat. After an idyllic week at sea, Callahan found himself on his emergency raft after something smashed into his boat. Not long thereafter, the line tethering his raft to the boat broke, setting him adrift with little food, only 2 weeks' worth of water, and not much hope of reaching the shipping lanes where he could be rescued. However, encouraging things began to happen. He noticed that his raft attracted sea creatures. Barnacles stuck onto the raft and brought fish, which Callahan caught with a spear gun he purchased on a whim before departing. A school of 50 Dorado fish began to escort the raft and provided companionship and food when necessary during his 1,800-mile journey. In the gear he salvaged 3 pencils. In the gear that he salvaged were 3 pencils, which he lashed together to make a sextant so he could get an idea of his location. On his 76th day adrift, as his strength waned, he awoke to lights ahead of him. The fish around his raft had attracted birds, which in turn caught the attention of some fishermen who had never fished in the area. They followed the flock in search of a good catch. Instead, they found and rescued Callahan. You might be tempted to call Callahan one lucky guy, but there is no such thing as luck. The universe always provides. No luck required. Spirit supplied all things and events he needed for his safe passage. While Callahan called those things coincidences, we know better. The affirmation is, I know the universe always abundantly provides me with whatever I need. So, coming back to the readings. I never read much about Ralph Waldo Trine, so I decided to look him up. And I guess what intrigued me was the fact that his name was so close to Ralph Waldo Emerson. who comes up a lot in our readings and comes up a lot in our classes. But in truth, Ralph Waldo Trine, what I read about him, his beliefs were more in line with New Thought. In fact, he's considered to be a New Thought writer. I wonder if I can read this here. It says, as a young man, he worked as a correspondent for the Boston Evening Telegraph. In 1891, he studied history and political science at Johns Hopkins University and obtained his A.M. from Knox College in 1893. He got married, he had one son. I'm abbreviating here. It says he was influenced by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who we just mentioned, and also by George Herron's Christian Socialism, which I'd never heard of. This is what his views are described of a mixture of the following: Buddhism, pantheism, spiritualism, transcendentalism, Christian socialism, and Neo-Vedanta philosophy. However, it says, Trine authored In Tune with the Infinite, from which that quote came, and says it's remained the most popular publication in the New Thought movement. I don't know if that's true or not. I got to look it up. And it's been translated into 20 languages. So I really didn't know much about him, and I've got this from, of all places, guess where? Wikipedia. So naturally, because I'm a curious person, I have got to go and look up his book. And I'm sure Jesse might be shocked that I haven't read it, but I haven't. It's never been pointed out to me before. So I'm going to go and look it up. So, and it's called In Tune with the Infinite, which is where the quote came from. So the whole point of this message from Reverend Joanna is that we're never left alone. That there's always something supporting us, and that something is, whatever you want to call it, the ground of all being, that which brought everything into existence. And there's loads and loads of words for it throughout the world, as you know, many, many words, but it's all the same thing. It's the one source from which all things come. A lot of American native people called it the Great Spirit, and just as good a word as any. See, I think that when these kind of things happen and these coincidences, quote unquote, which really aren't coincidences, come together, I think it's because deep down within us, we have this belief that we'll be supported. We may not be consciously aware of it, but I believe that deep down, this guy Callahan had this belief that he would be rescued. He just didn't know how. It's kind of like when we do spiritual mind treatments and we put our requests into the law, as we call it, the universal subjective, that we don't know how it's going to come about, but we just believe it is going to come about. So I believe at some level of his being, he had this belief. And in New Thought, we simply make this something that we can subjectively do, that we can actually use this belief to bring things to pass. So instead of having just this deep-seated belief, and it may or may not happen depending on our belief system, when we actually consciously and deliberately put this idea into practice as spiritual mind treatment, then things do start to happen. Things come our way and things just work out. So that's my take on this whole thing. It's not a lot. If you've been looking, you'll have seen Reverend Lisa this morning. You may or may not have seen our service. It's available. There are lots of services from different New Thought centers around the country and around the world. And I know people who listen to several of them, watch several of them, and that's fine. You know, it's just that I happen to be attached to one. But I do listen to other ministers talking. And as I mentioned before, there's one in particular that I listen to on I'm pointing here because I usually have my AirPods in at the gym, and that's how I listen to it from my phone. And she's a New Thought minister out of the Los Angeles area, and I like her messages. I'm just going to leave you with a reminder that Reverend Lisa will be on tomorrow morning. And Reverend Jesse today reminded us about self-care. And he pointed out the fact that Reverend Lisa is always reminding us about self-care. So it came up again this morning in the service. The service was good. My wife liked it. She liked it because it was simple, it was direct, it was easy to understand. What's it all about? I'm not going to tell you because you can go there and you can look it up. If I tell you, you might not go. It's kind of like when I give a talk or a speech or a lecture. I usually don't give handouts. Why? Because as soon as I give the handout, guess what happens? People start to read it and they're not paying attention anymore. If it's necessary to work with during the whatever the course is, I'll give it to people. But if not, I'll have them wait till the end and then I'll hand it out so they can use it as a reminder. So the affirmation says, I know the universe always abundantly provides me with whatever I may need. I know the universe always abundantly provides me with whatever I may need. It's a simple message. We have to do just one thing, have the faith to believe that our good is coming. So can you do that? Well, why do we do our spiritual practices? To make sure that these things do come about. So with that, I'm going to sign off and say, as I said, remember Reverend Lisa tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and I'll be back somewhere around about 5 o'clock tomorrow evening. All depends actually, because I've got a CPS mediation that I'm conducting tomorrow afternoon. Who knows what time that will finish, and that's like 10, 15 miles away from here. So I'll do my best to be back at 5 tomorrow, Monday, the 18th. But as I said, I can't guarantee it. So until next time, namaste.